great to be with you here today. I've always been fascinated by one particular question. What does success look like? And then I've thought, so from that, what are the key criteria for me to be successful? And what are the things that others expect of me to be successful? When I started looking around at people who were traditional winners, I started to get a bit confused about what the answers to those questions might be. When I looked in sport, I found a lot of gold medalists who were not happy on the top step of the podium, who actually spoke about depression, being unfulfilled, feeling empty. From the golfer Thomas Bjorn, who won his first European tournament at the age of 25 and then said, "Is that it?" That's exactly the same phrase that Andrew Strauss used when he was captain of the Test cricket team when England became the world #1 for the first time. And they sat in the training room afterwards, after it was announced that they'd reached the #1 spot. And Andrew Strauss said, "Is that it?" And as he sat around him, there were a lot of broken men, a lot of severe mental health challenges that that team had gone through on the way to becoming #1. Victoria Pendleton said that she didn't feel very happy after she won her gold medal in Beijing and didn't feel like celebrating. Tyson Fury spoke about the void that came the morning after he knocked out Vladimir Klitschko, the almost, up to that point, invincible world champion in boxing. There is no end of sportsmen who win, and yet it doesn't seem to bring that life fulfillment that we are all led to believe is what will come. That myth that is sometimes held up that sporting success, business success, school success will bring something everlasting, and actually it doesn't. Chris Evert said that the high of winning Wimbledon lasts about a week. Then what? What comes next? How does that win link into something of lasting value? Mark Spitz, the incredible swimming legend who won 7 gold medals in Munich in 1972 at the Olympics, never managed to find a life after swimming when he realized that that success didn't have a lasting value. When I looked in other fields, I found the same phenomenon. In school, there are lots of kids that leave with bagfuls of A grades, A-star grades, and yet these are not the most successful leaders in their careers later on. And yet at school, this is what we're led to believe is exactly what we should be aiming for. In business, there are successful leaders who are burnt out, and the levels of burnout are increasing. In organizations that are winning, organizations doing really brilliant, productivity and motivation can often start to decline at the very point that the business is at its most successful. What is it that we're chasing, and how are we defining winning, and how are we defining success in a way that doesn't seem to bring lasting value? That for me was the question that drove me to write The Long Win. I have found winning to be a theme throughout my life, as with all of us, from the classroom to the boardroom and everything in between. We see it in films, we see it in books, we see it in the media all the time. We read about it in history. Who are the winners on the battlefields? Those are the strong people. Those are the role models, the heroes, the gladiators of the past. But actually, that model is quite outdated and misses out a lot of what is probably important for us to achieve sustained success when we live in a very complex world that requires more than individual heroism to be successful in the long term. What I found is that there are 3 areas, the 3 C's, that are an important way of keeping us on track to define success for the longer term. When success is defined narrowly, about a single moment in time, crossing the line first in a race, getting an A grade at school, or hitting our annual targets, then it often is disconnected from the things that would enable that success to be sustained. When we view success as short-lived and short-termist, then we cut ourselves off from investing in the things that would help us to thrive over the long term. Some of the factors, the values about how we live, the relationships that we have with one another, and how we deepen those relationships, the way we think, our mindset, our behaviors. If we don't invest in these on a daily basis, then it's hard for us to actually reach our potential individually and collectively over the longer term. The 3 C's of the long win are about clarity, constant learning, and connection. Clarity is about an ongoing process of clarifying what matters over the longer term, about clarifying and broadening our success criteria so that it's not just one thing on one day that constitutes success. It's actually a whole series of experiences, of stories, of development that happens over time, of highs and lows along the way. It's the whole picture. It's not just one single moment. And when we start to shift our mind about the timescales of success, then we start to shift the experience that we have, and we start to unlock more of what we're capable of. So clarity is about clarifying how we do things as well as what we do. It's how we achieve the gold medal in sport that determines whether the feeling we have on top of the podium is a feeling that's good, that's positive, and that links to a life thereafter, that links to lessons that will help us in life after sport, whether it's managing pressure, developing teams, or learning how to look after ourselves. All of these factors are important in sporting success and relate to life afterwards. But when we see sporting success as something narrow, something about just being tough and strong, not showing any vulnerability or humanity, then that feeling can be quite disconnected when at the top of the podium, you have disconnected yourself from the communities that matter around you, personal and professional. It's important to clarify success both on a daily basis as well, and include the short-term goals and the longer-term piece. In sports psychology, I can remember being helped in the last part of my rowing career. I was an Olympic rower for 10 years. And I can remember being supported to get better results when I started to separate away from the results and think about performance. Sports psychology teaches us now to make a clear division between the concept of results and performance. Now, we all want the results as much as ever. That hasn't changed. But the way to optimize those results, which are often way beyond our control, but what we can do is to control the factors that we are responsible for and optimize our performance, what we bring to the race, to the competition, to the matches. The result in itself is going to depend on a whole lot of factors we can't control. Maybe referees or umpires may play a role. Luck will play a role. Perhaps the weather, the environment, injuries, our competitors, of course. All of these factors will influence the result. But the bit we influence is our performance. So let's focus all of our control and all of our attention on those things. And when we start to focus on our performance, we used to start to define, what does success look like today? Now, I know in the future that success is about going faster than the rest of the world at the Olympics or the World Championships on a lovely sunny lake with thousands of people watching and millions watching at home. But what does success look like today on a slightly chilly day in April? I need to define success today if I'm to optimize the improvements and the gains that I make to get anywhere near reaching that final peak performance. But it doesn't look like that peak performance. So I have to break that peak performance down and think about what are all of the different ingredients that will help me to perform at my best. And I need today to improve all of them, the measurable and the less measurable, the easily visible things and the less visible things. So I need today to improve both the way I communicate, the way I think, my mindset, and of course, my endurance, my strength, my power, my technique. All of those things are part of a peak performance, and all of them have to be developed today in a small way. For us to have peak communication, to be understanding each other almost telepathically in the midst of a crew, in the midst of an Olympic final, we need to build those communication skills every single day. And so as athletes, we start to learn that what we need to do is not focus on becoming world-class at winning. I mean, we still want to win, that hasn't gone away, but the way to do that is to become world-class at learning. And the second C of the long win is a constant learning approach, a constant learning mindset, where today I'm looking to optimize all of the things that are important to my performance in any small ways that I can. And I'm looking across the piece. I'm looking at performance broadly, not just the physical stuff, but the mindset, the behaviors, the relationships, the communication, the collaboration, all of these things that will be important to me exploring my potential. And I need to invest in these, even if they're not scheduled, even if they're not on the agenda of meetings, they're not in my electronic calendar. I need all of these things to be developed today if I am to explore my potential. And that's how I define what success looks like on a daily basis. That will carry me through the short-term goals, those metrics, the things that we love to measure in our organizations, the quarterly targets. But it will also take me beyond those, because it will give me the skills and values and experiences to take into whatever comes next in my career or beyond my career. Constant learning is an approach that enables us to keep changing, to be resilient to things happening around us, because we are always developing. We don't just learn in pockets here and there. We learn all the time. We bring feedback and review and reflection and habits of learning into every meeting that we have, every interaction. It's an opportunity not just to do a transaction, not just to look at the agenda points, but at the same time to be deepening connections, to be understanding different people's perspectives, to be learning something that we didn't know before we went into that meeting. And of course, core to all of this is people. And the third C of the long win is connection. It is so important that we see that we cannot succeed alone. And if we cannot succeed alone, then we need to prioritize relationships in everything that we do to make sure that these come first, not last. That we're not allowing tasks to drive everything that we do, but that we are looking at the people involved in the tasks that we work on. That we are making sure we're deepening relationships, not just seeing that people we work with in a transactional, superficial way. When I worked as a diplomat for the British Foreign Office for over a decade, specialising in conflict issues around the world, I learned a lot about how to connect and influence, and how important relationships could be to changing the world around us. Diplomacy really saw building connections as the heart of what we did. But do you know what? There isn't a job out there that doesn't have building connections at the heart of it. And we realized that whenever we were dealing with some really challenging disputes that went back years, decades, centuries, the only way that we could move things forwards was by connecting with the people we were negotiating with beyond the issues we were negotiating. I can remember before I went on my first posting to the beautiful capital city of Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina, talking to a very wise and eminent ambassador to get his advice. And I thought he might talk about the geopolitics, about the history of the region, but he didn't. He focused on connections. And he said to me, the thing that's going to be most crucial to this role and any roles that follow is how you connect with the people that you come across. Because the way that you will get the deepest and the best insights into the people and history and culture of this country is through the people that you will meet. And it doesn't matter whether they're a prime minister or a taxi driver, they will all be able to give you better insights and expand your own perspective and understanding and what you'll then be capable of doing. And he gave me 3 tips. The first thing he said is always to find out about a person beyond the job role. Who are they? What do they care about? What gets them up in the morning? We all have these job titles that often are quite meaningless. They don't tell us really who we are working with. And if I'm working in a team or working on any important piece of work, then I always want to get to know who it is that I'm working with beyond the CV. The CV tells me nothing about them, except perhaps their access to education and the advantages and privileges that they've had. But I want to know, what is it that brings the best out in them? I want to know what drives them, the things they really care about, their strengths and their weaknesses, and how I can connect with them. So the first tip was to find out about somebody beyond their job title. The second thing was listen more than you speak. Listening is our biggest influencing tool. It's our biggest tool in negotiation. It's our biggest tool in connection, collaboration, and making a difference. Listening again, and listening even more. And the last thing that he said was then to find what you have in common and build on it. Often it will be really obvious what you don't have in common: cultural, historical, political, linguistic barriers. But he said your job as a diplomat is to find what you do have in common, the shared aims of moving this country forward, of moving an aspect of the politics or the economy or the environment, of improving it in some way. You will always have a shared goal. You just have to find it. And when you've got that, then you can start to co-create something that wasn't there before. That's when you start to make progress. Now, over the last year, I think we've all been forced to reevaluate what success looks like. A lot of the things that we thought were going to be how we viewed success in 2020 were swept away by the pandemic. It's actually been a great opportunity to reevaluate what matters now and for the longer term. And I think that the 3 C's of the long win offers us a really healthy way of thinking, redefining success, clarifying broader and longer lasting success criteria, bringing a constant learning approach to this very uncertain, unpredictable world that we inhabit, and making sure that we prioritize connections in everything that we do. Thank you so much for joining and for listening this morning. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions.